Okay, hello, guten Abend hier im Presseclub Concordia. Mein Name ist Matthias Zoyer. Ich darf Sie für den Presseclub Concordia willkommen heißen beim zweiten Teil der Veranstaltungsreihe Her mit den Daten, die wir zu Ehren des am 1. September in Kraft tretenden Informationsfreiheitsgesetzes hier hosten, gemeinsam mit der Rechercheplattform Dossier und gemeinsam mit dem Forum Informationsfreiheit. Der Sinn der Veranstaltungsreihe ist, dass wir Expertinnen aus dem In- und Ausland einladen, die uns von ihren Recherchen mit Hilfe von Auskunftsbegehren erzählen, um hier die Journalisten in Österreich vorzubereiten und zu inspirieren. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass wir heute zwei hochkarätige Gäste aus Ungarn bei uns haben. And we're going to switch to English for this event, which is going to be moderated by Markus Hametner, who I will hand the microphone now. Good evening.
Thank you. Right. Welcome from my side as well. And before we start, I'd just like to take a minute because we just heard today that our co-founder, friend, very good colleague, Hubert Zickinger, passed away. And I'd like just to say, wait a couple of seconds and then go on with the event. Because, as sad as everything around that is, he would not want us to stay silent and not want us to stop work. So we will continue working and welcome our guests for tonight from the Hungarian investigative platform Direkt36, András Pethő and Zsuzsanna Wirth. And we'll have two introductory talks by András and Zsuzsanna, and then we'll have a lot of time to discuss, ask questions, and discuss more about potential research and also access to information. Welcome. Thanks again for coming to Vienna.
Thank you so much for having me and Zsuzsanna here. I studied German in high school, aber ich habe alles vergessen. Really sorry about this. So I'm going to talk a little about the state of independent journalism in Hungary in general, and then Zsuzsanna will talk about a specific project from Direkt36 that was based heavily on public records that we had to fight for quite hard. But first, let me tell you a little bit about the general picture in Hungary. So, you may have heard a lot about how the Hungarian government has cracked down on the independent press in recent years, and that's all true. But that's only half of the story. There has been a little bit less focus on another thing that the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and his friends have done with the media, which was not just that they have shut down outlets to shrink the space for independent journalism. They also worked really hard to build their own media. And I know that, even probably in this country as well, and in many countries, there are outlets that are leaning left or right, or sympathize with certain parties or ideologies. But I think what we have in Hungary is kind of unique, at least in this part of the world, in the European Union, or in the so-called democratic world. And it's unique for two reasons. One is that just simply the size of the propaganda pro-government media. We are not talking about a few outlets that are friendly with Orbán. We are talking about a whole ecosystem, an ecosystem that includes hundreds of newspapers and news sites several television channels, including the public broadcasters, one of the two biggest commercial television stations, almost all radio stations in the country, and literally every county newspaper in Hungary, which is basically the local media in Hungary. And there, of course, now social media is also full of pro-government influencers who are paid by entities close to the government. And the size is just one thing. It's really important to understand, and this machine is not functioning as news media. Its only purpose is to serve the interests of the government and to spread its messages. There is hardly any autonomy in the system. They get directions, on what they can or cannot cover. And if there is a message that has to be delivered, then the whole machine jumps into action. Let me show you here. These are the front pages of some of these local papers that I mentioned. You can see that they published the same day, the same photo, the same headline. It was about Orban, again, was talking about how Brussels attacked Hungary. And this happens on a regular basis. And I will show you a few more examples of this, but I also would like to explain how we got here. Orban has been in politics for more than 3 decades. He has never really liked journalists. I think he felt that his setbacks early in his career was because journalists were unfair with him. And I think in his worldview, independent journalism doesn't exist. He always, he thinks that journalists are always serving some kind of master. There is someone, paying them to do what they do. In an interview in the mid-90s, he even said that he thought that the media was one of the most dangerous things in the world, which probably explains a lot what happened later. To illustrate this, let me tell you a personal story. I also interviewed Viktor Orban once back in 2006 when he was in opposition, but was already a legendary figure in Hungarian politics, and he was working really hard to get back in power. And when we met, he was quite friendly, even charming. He's clearly the kind of politician who knows how to connect with people, especially if he thinks that he has something to gain from that interaction. And during the interview, that changed a little. I still remember how his face went dark when I was pushing questions that he obviously didn't want to answer. And it was a tense exchange, but as far as I remember, when I turned off the recorder and then as I was leaving, he was friendly again. But what happened afterwards was less friendly again. In Hungary, I don't know about the practice here, but in Hungary, you're supposed to send back the edited transcript of the interview to the interviewee. The idea is that they can review it, and they think that some of the things are not okay, or you misrepresented what they said, and they can ask for corrections before publication. But in this case, something different happened. Orban's press people, they sent back the interview, the article, with some of his answers entirely deleted and rewritten. We told them that we wouldn't accept this. Then they said that, okay, there is no interview, you cannot publish it. In the end, we published the interview, but as you can imagine, that was the last time I interviewed Viktor Orban. And when he came back to power in 2010, then he made sure that he would not have to answer uncomfortable questions again. One of the first pieces of legislation that they introduced was a new media law. that completely restructured how media is regulated in Hungary. You know, the senior people, the leaders of these, the new authority, new agencies were people really absolutely loyal to the new government, and they also took over the public media, the public broadcasters, by appointing new leaders who forced out the journalists who were not considered friendly enough with the government. They also made some pretty smart decisions. I mean, smart in a devilish sense. One of them was that they made the service of the Hungarian State News Agency, services of the Hungarian State News Agency free. You know, this used to be a slightly dry but pretty reliable news service that was pretty costly, so only the bigger news outlets could afford it. But by making it free, they made sure that even the smallest radio station or local news site would use this service. And of course, they killed even the possibility of any alternative news agency in the country. And this was not a generous gesture. This was because at the same time they transformed this state news agency into a mouthpiece of the government. In 2022, we reported, actually it was Zsuzsi's story as well, that the news agency got direct orders from the government on how to write about certain events. In the story, we reported how and Bertalan Havasi, who was the Prime Minister's chief of press at the time, sent an email to the director of the news agency, and he wrote in the email, "Hi, could you write an article about this, citing me as a source? Thanks," in a very casual tone. Actually, the instruction was about something not that significant. It was about I think a thank you letter from a European rabbi. But I think this episode showed, like, how things work between the government and the news agency. And we could reconstruct how, because the story was published, and we could see like how then Havasi, the Orbán's press officer, he also sent told them what the exact headline and the lead should be, and the news agency followed the instructions word by word. So basically, it was Orbán's press chief who wrote and edited the story of the supposedly independent news agency. But the public media was just the first step. Pretty soon they started to go after private media as well. I happened to work, and actually Zsuzsi as well, we were colleagues at that news site, Origo, which became one of the first targets. It had been a great place to do journalism for a long time, but around 2013 we started to feel that things were changing. When we were pursuing stories that were too sensitive for the government, then we got messages from the management of our publishing company, which was owned by a German telecommunications company, and then so our publisher was telling us not to pursue certain stories. And then when we pushed back, the editor-in-chief of Origo was forced out of his job, and then together with several colleagues, I resigned, and then soon this formerly independent news site was sold to some pro-government oligarchs and one of Orbán's allies. And now Origo is basically the digital flagship news site of the propaganda machinery. Here you just here are just a couple of headlines. I mean, the one says that breaking news, Putin was right. I guess this is a headline that they can use over and over again. Then, of course, they like writing stories about George Soros. This is about how he wants to influence artificial intelligence in a kind of brutal way. Sometimes they also run stories. They need the clicks, so there is a lot of nudity, even kind of like soft porn content. Or there is a story about how they found evidence for extraterrestrials in space. So they have some interesting stories. So what did we do after leaving Origo? We decided to set up our own organization that has become Direkt36, and this was a little bit more than 10 years ago, when we made a few key decisions. One was that it's going to be a nonprofit, and it will rely heavily on audience contributions, because we figured from our own experience that this could give us more protection, any kind of crackdown. We learned from what happened at Origo that political pressure is very often happening through the owners, the investors. I mean, you don't have to look very far for examples. When a couple of years later, in 2016, Népszabadság, Hungary's biggest newspaper and one of the oldest left-wing newspapers, was shut down. It happened as an Austrian businessman, Heinrich Petzina. The name probably rings a bell here. So he owned the media company that published Népszabadság, but he was selling it to a friend of Viktor Orbán, and in the process he shut down Népszabadság from one day to the other. Another key decision was to focus on investigative reporting, because we thought, and I think we were right on this, that in this changing, deteriorating media landscape, the first casualty will be in-depth, hard-hitting investigative journalism that takes time and resources and manpower to pursue. So these are the long slides. I'm sorry. I should have checked. Sorry, I'm at the last of the slides are missing. But so we are not part of the daily news cycle. We work on long-term projects. Sometimes we spend months or even a year on a story. And this is how we investigated the family businesses of Viktor Orbán, or we were part of some of the biggest global collaborations, such as the Panama Papers or the Pegasus project, which was a really special investigation, because we learned throughout our reporting that two of our reporters were also surveilled with the Pegasus spyware, and we also learned that the surveillance was carried out by the Hungarian security services, and we've also done projects like what Zsuzsi will talk about how hospital infections is a really serious threat and costing a lot of lives in Hungary. And most recently, we released a documentary, The Dynasty. We started producing documentary films a couple of years ago. We produced one about the hospital infections. But this February, we released our second long-form documentary, which was about the Orbán family's businesses. And now it has more than 3.6 million views on YouTube, which is, in a country of less than 10 million is pretty good. And we know that most of the viewers are from Hungary. It is now by far the most watched, not only documentaries, but not only the documentary, but also any kind of journalistic content that was published on YouTube in Hungarian. So we are really happy with that. By the way, it has. Last week we uploaded the German subtitles as well. I mean, it's been available with English subtitles since it was released. So, you know, we are Hungarians. We are famous for our pessimism, and but I'd like to end my part of the talk on some, you know, more upbeat note, because I think, you know, our 10 years and our stories and our films show that, you know, even if the circumstances are difficult, you know, we can still find a way to pursue our beautiful and rewarding profession, and we can find a way to our audience even in this really messy and chaotic media environment that we are, I guess you are also living in. If we are, you know, if we are creative and innovative enough, and if we have a powerful story, and at the end of the day, it's about the stories that we tell. And you know, I'm the executive director of Direkt36, which is a fancy name for a bureaucrat. But so let me hand the floor to Zsuzsi, who is a real kick-ass investigative journalist and editor, and she's going to tell you about a really amazing project that she did with one of our colleagues, Camilla Martin. Okay.
So you're far too kind, András. Because he's also a kick-ass reporter and not just a bureaucrat. And I'm trying to be optimistic in the end of this presentation as well. So I would like to talk a little about our project from 2 years ago about hospital-acquired infections in Hungary. And I would like to talk about it because, as far as I know, you're interested in FOIA requests and how they are handled by the authorities and courts. And maybe some of you are also interested in data journalism project, which was, this was a data journalism project, and it was kind of one of my favorites as one. So let me talk a little about it. A very short introduction. Maybe all of you know who Ignác Semmelweis was. He was a Hungarian-born, but he was a doctor who lived in Vienna, and I believe he was the director of one of the Vienna's hospitals, and he's famous for finding a way to save mothers from dying because of hospital-acquired infections. So he's very, very famous for that. And that's why we called our project Project Semmelweis, because we were thinking that it is very, very sad that in the homeland of Semmelweis, we still have so many problems with hospital infections. So, and I also, we were very sorry to conclude that Hungarian healthcare system is very ill, and that it is basically left alone because there has been no Ministry of Health for more than 1 decade. I mean, no autonomous Ministry of Health, which is, I think, very strange at least. And that even official figures show that hospital-acquired infections are steadily rising. So not only during the COVID, but since COVID, they also increased, the total amount of infections increased by 2.5 times. And on top of that, authorities are very secretive, and public data cannot really be used to find out why this is happening. Also, we cannot easily find out how the state tries to tackle this problem. But as we saw that England could tackle the problem very well through transparency, we decided to do something about it and make a good story about it. Here you can see the figures, how they are rising, which is, I think, quite alarming. And these are, again, official figures. and the reality can be even more higher. The investigation started with a leaked document, but which I cannot talk about really due to source protection. In the end, we couldn't use that document, but we managed to obtain many others. And that's why that this problem didn't kill the story, but we could pursue it on. It took us 1 year to investigate. 2 reporters, me and my colleague Camilla Marton, worked on it. We were helped by a lawyer, a data scientist, and also a very kind and renowned biostatistician. We ended up publishing 4 articles and our first documentary. We conducted many interviews, read hundreds of pages of scientific documents, waited many months for court decisions, and obtained tens of thousands of rows of data that were previously unknown in Hungary. I won't be long, just to say some of the main results is that we could prove with data that the government is very well aware that this problem is quite serious, but they really want to hide the facts because they don't want the public to be scared. We also could prove that there are much more infections than what the statistics shows. And during the process, we could obtain and analyze a vast amount of data, an analysis that is unprecedented in Hungary, and the data was based on FOIA requests. So that's my short introduction to tell you about how we were obtaining the data. To talk about the data a little bit closer, these are data about hospital-acquired infections that were reported by all the Hungarian hospitals to the national body. It's called National Center for Public Health and Pharmacy, NCPHP, a very ugly name. So they are responsible for monitoring nosocomial infections and then propose policies to change it. Their database shows a lot about the occurring infections. They show that what kind of infections occurred when, where, and how, what kind of diseases that had the person infected, and whether they died or recovered. There are some details about their treatment, and also when a patient dies, it also indicates whether they died because of the hospital-acquired infection or for some other reason. So it's very rich, and they are like hundreds of thousands of rows to talk about. So obtaining the data, it started back in 2017 when an NGO, it's called Hungarian Civil Liberties Union, they filed a FOIA request and they were asking this mentioned state body to give them detailed data of all the cases reported by Hungarian hospitals. But they denied access. So HCLU had to go to court. There was the first court ruling in a few months, and the court ruled that it is okay to be kept secret. But they didn't give up, so they filed an appeal. And that was their first win, because the second court decision overruled this first one and decided that the NCPHP should disclose the requested data. Because Hungarian people have the right to know about the healthcare system and how it works or doesn't work. But the story wasn't over, sadly, because the state body filed an appeal again. This time they went for the Supreme Court. There are some of their arguments that I collected for you, which are, I think, useful to know. Their first argument was that they have already made the data public, which is of course not true. In the same document, in the same appeal, they argued that the data cannot be made public because it is very sensitive health data, and it's it's sensitive even if they are anonymized, so it's impossible. They also argued that like normal people cannot understand these data, only professionals. So it's very dangerous for us to know about it because we will misinterpret it. They also said, which is even more, I don't know, funny, that they think that if patients knew more about which hospitals perform poorly, they would start to avoid them, and they don't want that. They don't want people to avoid hospitals. And they also feared that if hospitals were exposed, they would cover up infections in the future and stop reporting them. All of that would happen because the press would want to know too much. You can see, I think that most of these are valid arguments, but they are not legal arguments. So it was not easy to convince the court, you know. So Supreme Court's final decision came in 2019. It was 2 years from the original FOIA request, and they decided that the data are public. So they were very happy because they got a few years of data. And then came us and Direkt36. We decided to have a closer look at hospital-acquired infections. And when we heard that this NGO, ACLU, had already fought for a big bunch of data, and then we thought that why not? We could file a FOIA request and then have our own data from more recent years. So we did it. Intentionally, we copied the text of the original FOIA requests in order to, you know, not to confuse the authorities or whatever. But and also we cited the Supreme Court decision, which was kind of understandable, that they said that these data are public. So we expected to be easy, because who would deny the disclosure of information about hospital infections that were already ruled to be public by the Supreme Court? She would. This lady on the right, she's called Cecilia Müller. She's the leader of this authority, the NCPHP, and she is very happy because she is being awarded by one of the ministers, an award called the Semmelweis Award, which is, I think, at least ironic. Obtaining the data, let's go and see what happened after. So they did not comply and did not give us the data at first. They denied our request, so we had to file a lawsuit again. One of the lawyers of ACLU helped us with that, which is a very good help for journalists who are kind of many times short on money to pay lawyers. So we filed a lawsuit and we started to attend court hearings, and this will be part of our documentary that we made about our work and the hospital infections investigation. Let's see if that works and has sound.
Azt szeretném megkérdezni, hogy ha már volt egyszer egy ítélet, hogy nekünk ki kell adni ezeket az adatokat, és akkor miért nem kapjuk meg a frisseket? És csak azt szeretném kérdezni, hogy miért titkolják ezeket az adatokat?
A válasz az, hogy ezek mondjuk jogi kérdések, tehát hogy én ebben nem szeretnék belemenni, hogy itt a bírósági döntésekkel kapcsolatos adatkiadások vagy egyebekkel mi történik.
Az NNGK-nál vannak az adatok, tehát akkor odaadhatják, ez rajtuk múlik, hogy odaadják-e vagy sem?
Nyilván én az adatgyűjtő vagyok. Az adatkiadásról jogászok döntenek. Meg egy kúriai eljárás során erről alapvetően ezek jogi kérdések.
Viszonylag egyértelmű szerintem, hogy az alapvető adatoknak és információknak a közlése a kórházi fertőzésekről az állami feladat. Nem véletlenül van előírva az, hogy ennek a jelentésnek el kell készülnie, illetve több más jogszabály is vonatkozik egyáltalán arra, hogy az erre vonatkozó adatokat gyűjteni kell. Tehát az állam ezt fontosnak tartja. Nyilvánvalóan azért is fontosnak kell tartania, mert hogyha elszabadulnak ezek a fertőzések az egészségügyi intézményekben, akkor nem fognak tudni normálisan beteget ellátni. Tehát ez egy központi probléma, amit meg kell oldani, vagy legalábbis kezelni kell. Az, hogy mi történik a kórházakban, ami egy ennyire fontos kérdés, arról pedig kötelező kommunikálni.
Aha, az utolsó. Igen. Második 44, yes.
Felkeres személyesen, alperesét senki, bíró a határozott hirdetésre megállapítja, hogy a képviselők nem jelentek meg, ami a határozott kivételtésének nem akadálya. Kihirdetem a plenáris törvényszék ítéltét, kötelezi a bíróság az alperes, hogy 15 napon belül adja ki a felperes részére az egészségügyi ellátással összefüggő fertőzésekre vonatkozó adatokat a 2017-es, 2018-as, 2019-es, 2020-as és a 21-es évekből a személyes adatok kitakarásával, kórházonként lebontva a fertőző betegségek jelentésének rendjéről szóló 1/2014 első hónap 16 emlőrendelet 4. szakaszat, ide 10. szakasz második bekezdése, valamint az egészségügyi ellátással összefüggő fertőzések megelőzéséről, e tevékenységi szakmai minimum feltételeiről és felügyeleteiről szóló 2009, a 6.18 rendelet 14. szakasz első bekezdése alapján. Kötelezi a bíróság az alperes, hogy fizessen meg a felperesnek 15 napon belül 100 000 forint megköltséget, az eljárás illetékmentes 15 napon belül a helyen felnevezésnek. Köszönöm szépen a megjelenést. Tovább szépen.
Mi köszönjük. Viszontlátásra.
Köszönjük szépen.
Szerintem, hogyha fellebbeznek, az egy kicsit azt jelenti, hogy így pazarolják a saját költségvetésüket, mert nem mellesleg közpénz egyébként, arra, hogy tovább vigyenek egy ügyet, ami jogi úton igazából nem védhető. Sokkal jobb lenne leülni velük, arról vitatkozni, hogy hol lehet ezeket az adatokat félreérteni, ami miatt ők annyira aggódnak, hogy inkább oda sem adják. Akkor esetleg lehetne inkább ebbe fektetni energiát, hogy segítenek, és akkor nincs félreértés, szerintem.
Ja.
Nincsen, hogy bíró. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Sorry. So I hope that wasn't too long and that you could read the captions. So after that, guess what happened? They filed an appeal. So we again had to wait a few months to get a final ruling, which came in September 2023. So 1 year after our FOIA request, and it was in the end made public. So that's how we obtained all the data, and I'm going to be real quick from now on because you are here because of the FOIA requests and not because of the data analysis, but just a few information about it. So yeah, we were very happy to get all the documents, but there was a small problem because they looked like this, and this, and this, and it was PDF. It wasn't like a CSV or an Excel file. You couldn't really use it in this form. It was like a big, complete mess. 8,189 pages of mess. So really didn't make sense. For us, at least, the headers didn't make sense. Some tables were cut up and put into different places. 1 year's data looked really differently from the others. So at first it looked hopeless, but then we got help from OCCRP, who have an excellent data team, and they helped us make sense of it, and they really managed to turn this whole bunch of documents to a manageable database. So in the end, we ended up with 25,982 rows of information of infections, all types of infections that are monitored. This was a CSV table, and we, as I mentioned already, we could obtain the data from 2015 in the end until 2022. And it looks like this, and we were very happy about it, so we could start to analyze. Not really, we had to first understand the data and then try to find a way to analyze it without misinterpretation, because that was the basic problem why the authorities didn't want to disclose the information in the first place, because but they thought that we would not understand them. So we really had to be thorough and find a way. And we wanted to convince people that it is possible, because many professionals that we talked to told us that it's not possible to analyze this data properly. It's just not possible to show which hospital is more dangerous and which hospital is more secure to go. But we wanted to find a way. It took us a few months, and the savior is Tamás Ferenczy, a very nice man from Budapest University, who is a renowned biostatistician, and he didn't give up until he found a way to analyze the data. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but just 3 very short points. We had to make the data comparable, one hospital comparable to another, even if hospitals are really different. And we did it through trying to exclude the differences between patients. I mean, like the patient's health state and their illnesses and whatever they were in hospital for. So we first had to exclude the differences between patients, and also we had to exclude the differences between certain hospitals and hospital departments, because it's not so it can be very tricky, because in certain parts of hospitals it's more likely to get a hospital infections, while in other departments it's not very likely. So we had to find a way for that. After that, Tamás Ferenczy, whom I showed, used regression statistical modeling to show that. And he also tried 21 different statistical computing models in order to see whether the different models give different results. But he was quite satisfied to see that most of the different models showed basically the same results. So that's why we were kind of confident when we finally got the rankings, which looked in their raw form looked like this. On the left side, you can see the names of the hospitals, and on the right side, you can see the dots, and the dots are the most important, because that's what they show how likely you are to get a hospital-acquired infection in the case you go to that certain hospital. So we had a ranking in the end, after all. We could conclude that over the years, so year after year, some hospitals have consistently high infection rates and others have low infection rates. The hospitals that have had high incidences of at least 2 different types of infections in almost every year since 2017 were analyzed in more detail. So we also picked some hospitals that looked problematic, and we tried to see more, tried to get to know more about how they operate. And then there were like a huge bunch of articles published later. And we also concluded that there have been very few changes at the top of the list. So the worst places seem to stay the worst places, which indicates that despite all that work that hospitals do to report their data, somehow policy doesn't help them to tackle the problem. So the health authorities seem to be either inactive or either their efforts were ineffective. But the most important is, I think, that until Hungary or the authorities can find a way to tackle the rising problem of hospital infections and better the situation, like any of our readers can look up if they plan to go to a hospital, they can look it up whether the department that they are involved in is I don't know, dangerous or less dangerous. And also and that is the optimistic ending. I was planning that we believe that the problem cannot be swept under the carpet anymore. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot. So, any questions from the audience, or should I just go for it? Alex, please.
Yeah, thanks. Great work. I have two questions, one more concretely on this and the other one more on the general kind of economics of doing freedom of information requests. So more concretely on this, you spent all this time and published this great investigation. Was there any official reaction, or was there any unofficial acknowledgement of your work and, you know, individual hospitals who might have taken new measures? That was the first question. The second one I was really interested in. I mean, so this took you at least a year to obtain the data, not speaking of the entire result. So in your day-to-day work, what is the cutoff point where you say, okay, well, this is worth an FOI request. This isn't, it's also interesting, but it's not worth it. You know, do you always calculate, okay, do we have time to go to the court with this? Are there cases where you say, well, okay, would be nice to have, but we're never going to get it? Can you say a bit maybe about the dynamics of, you know, deciding yes or no?
You can hear me, right? Okay. So about the impact, it's really not that easy to say in the case of investigations like this, because, and also you must know that in Hungary, official reactions are not very positive most of the time when it comes to independent media investigations. So they obviously didn't say that we have to work to better the situation. But unofficially, we had information from inside the ministry responsible for health affairs that they were trying to, like they were hiring people for research on hospital infections.
That was even posted like publicly, a few weeks after the stories were published. Like they saw like a job advertisement for a data scientist who would work on health or hospital infection related analysis.
Yes, and also we had some leaked documents from within the ministry that showed that they were working on measures to take against hospital-acquired infections, which is a good thing. Also, we learned that they underlined that these measures have to be cheap because, I don't know, they don't really have a big budget for that, but still. So that's also we heard from our sources that within like hospital workers, it really generated many discussions, and they started to like talk about the problem more than before. And I think that is even more important than like official impact. So I think when healthcare workers start to mind the problem of hygiene and hospital infections, then that can lead to some change. At least that's what I believe.
Zsuzsi is a bit modest. This was a really, really big, this was the kind of story that really resonated so widely in Hungary. I was telling them when I was kind of afraid of making eye contacts with the other parents in my school, because every time I went there, someone came up to me with like, and I also have a hospital infection story in my family, and like everybody was talking about this story. Like, it was the subject on, one of the most popular commercial radio talk shows in the morning. So it was it was really the kind of story that traveled very, very widely in Hungary. And yes, the officials, in general, they try to ignore the results of investigative journalism, but in this case they couldn't really, and I'm sure it led to some policy changes.
There were some conferences as well within professional circles about how to whether we did a good job analyzing or not, and there was like high intensity debate as far as I know.
So in our case, actually we don't do that that many FOIA requests, but it's also partly because we work just differently. We have, I don't know, just a limited number of projects every year, and we don't really do, we don't really do fishing expeditions. So we usually file FOIA requests when we already have an ongoing investigation, and that FOIA is just one tool in the toolbox, and it's a really good tool as this investigation showed. But even in this the case of this investigation, they've done so much more. Developed sources. They also looked at court cases, where people were suing hospitals because of infections. So it was a much more complex thing. Because yeah, as you can see, we have to make filing a FOIA request it doesn't take that much time, but we know that in almost every case the answer will be no. Even if you're pretty sure that you would win that in the court, the government or whatever state agency you are turning to, they will say no, because that's their modus operandi. That's how they work. And that's why we are careful whether we file a request or not, because if we really need that data, then we know that we will have to fight for it. And then, yes, you can find good lawyers, but those HCLU and some other NGOs that help journalists, they also have limited resources. If you had to pay for a lawyer, for working on this for a year, that's quite a lot. So you have to make like a strategic decision as that. Okay, is this important enough? Is the story will be relevant like a year from now? Those kind of decisions.
Thank you for the interesting presentations. I'm Matthias. I'm with Forum Informationsfreiheit. I'm interested in, you gave us the timeline of the court decisions. From an Austrian perspective, they seem quite fast, and we are not used to a court being able to decide on a case and then an authority actually following up. And I'm interested in, how do you assess the independence of the courts? Can you still rely on the court system to come to a ruling that is not based on political considerations? And are the court decisions basically enforceable, or do you see that if there's a a last court ruling, basically, is that complied with, or do you still? I think you hinted at that that a court ruling doesn't resolve everything, but could you maybe explain a little bit more to what extent authorities comply and give out the information that is requested if there is a final court ruling? Thank you.
I think I don't know about cases when authorities didn't comply once a final court ruling was made. So I think
we have one good story from Direkt36 when we you remember that they delivered all those boxes to our office. Yeah, it was so when we were investigating how Orbán's father was benefiting from state-funded projects. Orbán's father has a stone mine in Hungary, not far from Budapest, and he was supplying stones and some other materials for state-funded or EU-funded projects. But this was all done secretly because he was just a supplier. He was not winning contracts. He was not bidding. So it was all in the shadows. But so we were working on this with another colleague, Blanca Zöldi, and then in the end it was she who filed a request with one of the state companies that was carrying out all these big projects, because knew that they had the receipts, they had the papers, and we won. the lawsuits, but this state company just didn't want to release the documents. So we had to go to the enforcement, I don't know, agency, and finally we got the documents. Of course, they were delivered on paper. Like we received like 28 big boxes. You know, our small office was really, you know, was not big enough to hold all those papers. But we, you know, this took, I don't even know how many years, like more than 2, maybe 3 years by the time we got the documents. And we learned that what helped us was that because this state company came under this enforcement procedure, so it meant that their employees couldn't get loans from the bank for their personal mortgage or, you know, personal loans. So that's what actually, you know, helped us to get these records finally. So regarding the, you know, the part of your question about the independence of the courts, you know, the judiciary is under pressure from the government. My impression, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this, I don't know, maybe you have other observations, but I think the lower level courts, especially like, you know, the courts in Budapest, they are following the law. And in most cases, you know, if it's really a public interest document, you will get it. But the higher it goes, it is less, you know, it is less clear. We know that, you know, the Curia, which is the Supreme Court in Hungary, that already has some people who are probably closer to the government than others. So yeah.
And I think like 2 years is, I don't know, maybe in Austria it's even longer, but 2 years is quite long when it comes to a journalistic story. That I don't know, like most of the data that you can obtain this way become useless by the time you get them. So that's quite long, I think.
I have one question for each of you. Did you ask, I mean, you now have data from the Hungarian government on hospital infections. Did you ask any other international examples for comparison data, and what were the reactions? And also, András, you have like 3 million views on a YouTube video. Do other media then reference that kind of content, and what other media outlets would you, and that maybe do daily reporting or more current reporting, would you recommend for the interested foreigner to read on Hungarian issues? Thank you.
Yes, we wanted to look international because we wanted to know whether there are countries that can fight hospital-acquired infections effectively, and we concluded that there is one country in the world which could be like an example for everyone, and it is England. There in England, hospital-acquired infections used to be a really big problem. I don't know, like 2 decades ago, 1.5 decades ago. And they decided to do something about it, and they decided to be extremely transparent about it. So they started to publish very detailed data into what happened in each hospital, and the result was astonishing because the number of infections shrinked pretty fast in a few years. And we also tried to look into other countries, and most of them did not follow this practice. Most of them deal with this data the same as Hungary, so they do not disclose very detailed information, including Austria, which is I think they publish several reports without many details every year, And we also tried to get in touch with them. So we had some emails. We sent some emails to the Austrian Ministry of Health in order to find out more about hospital-acquired infections, and they were very polite to answer us, but they did not disclose any information. Also, we wanted to look into there is this huge and wonderfully modern hospital in Vienna, AKH, which we really liked as compared to the Hungarian hospitals, how they look like. And we wanted to get within the walls and shoot some for the documentary, but they denied our request after some time because, I don't know, they were busy. So that's how, but we did not file a FOIA request in Austria, so I don't have any experience about it.
About the film, yes, it's been referenced and cited many times in Hungary, and it has become. What was especially great to see was that other reporters, from other outlets, try to interview, senior politicians, including Viktor Orbán. Or his son-in-law, who is featured in the film pretty prominently, and who didn't want to talk to us. And it was funny that the common response from all of them was that this film is full of lies. This is a smear campaign, but I didn't see it. So that was the I don't know how those two answers add up. Yes, this is a strange, but I think a welcome development in Hungary, that despite all the pressure, or maybe because of the pressure, actually there's been quite a lot of innovation in Hungary when it comes to the media scene. So especially in the digital space, so there are other news outlets, some of them, actually most of them, doing daily journalism, who are independent from the government. We have a publishing partner called Telex, which is basically is the former staff of Index, which was the biggest news site for a long time, alongside Origo, but it was also taken over by pro-government figures a few years ago. There is an outlet that's been around for a few years now called Partisan, which is based on YouTube and podcast platforms, and they are really successful. They also have amazing numbers. Not as high numbers as our documentary, but they have really good numbers, and they publish on a regular basis. Not just we worked on that film for a year, but they have really good reach, and so yeah, and some of these outlets, 444 is another independent outlet, and you can maybe not in German, but in English you will find some of their contents available.
Thank you. I know there is one more really excellent question in the audience, and I'm going to steal it if they don't ask it.
Okay, please lower your expectations. Thank you very much for the talk you gave, and also congratulations to the documentary. I watched it. It was very interesting. I have a more general question. Regarding Peter Magyar, who is a political shooting star in Hungary right now. And next year you have general elections. I would like to know how you would describe his relationship to media outlets, to independent media, and what do you think will his media agenda and media politics be?
You have experience with him.
Actually, no direct experience, but some of my colleagues have written a piece. We did a story about him recently, and then they interacted with him. So Peter Magyar is a really interesting guy. He was almost completely unknown a little bit more than a year ago. He was part of the Fidesz, the government system or universe, but a little bit more than a year ago, he broke from that machine and he turned against the government, basically. And now he's by most polls, he's the most popular politician, or his party is the most popular and has the biggest support in Hungary. And he has it's hard to describe his relationship with the media, with the independent media. He's a very strong critic of the government propaganda, and actually he's been very vocal about that. But he can be also quite critical with independent journalists, especially if they write things that he doesn't like. But he's he's very instinctive. I think he's younger than Orbán. He really understands social media or the new kind of media environment. He understands it much better than Orbán himself. I think he uses social media really, really well, sometimes for attacking, criticizing independent outlets. But I don't know if he knows this, but I think it's, to me as like an observer, I think it's clear that the media, the independent media, also, it was useful for him the way, because of course he has become this interesting figure. Like, he got a lot of coverage, some positive, some negative, some of them neutral. His whole entry into the political scene happened with an interview with Partizan, this outlet that I mentioned. They interviewed him in February 2024. Up until our documentary, that was the most watched journalistic content on YouTube in Hungarian. So I think he has this really ambivalent relationship. And to be honest, we don't know. He's not in power yet. I think it's quite normal that politicians don't like journalists. I don't think we need to be friends. Of course, I think it's better if politicians understand that independent journalism has an important role in a democratic society. And of course, we should be responsible, but in our work. But we should also do it with freedom and independence. So we'll see how he will. I have no idea. He has again. He's really strong now. The election is one year from now, almost, a little bit less. If there are no early elections, a lot can happen between that and now.
One last question.
I read that you also use OSINT techniques for your research. Could you tell us about one or two projects where you used open source intelligence, and how, which sources?
We are now, I think this is of course this is one of the most exciting tools in the toolbox that is now, and we try to keep up to date, stay up to date on this. We are not experts. I think we are not Bellingcat or the New York Times visual investigations team, but we've done stories. Most recently, the story about the son of the former central bank governor in Hungary. This is a big story in Hungary because a lot of money has disappeared. Let's put it that way. And then the son, who also benefited from some state-funded projects, or even some programs from the central bank. So he showed up in Dubai, and one of our colleagues, Daniel Szőke, started to investigate his presence there. So he spent a lot of time on different social media platforms, on obscure Dubai corporate databases, and he could dig up some really interesting stuff. Or another thing was when we looked into together with Le Monde, the French newspaper. We were investigating how Orban's son, Gaspar Orban, was involved and probably still involved in this really controversial military mission in Chad, in Africa, and my colleagues, found social media footages from that were posted by government agencies in Chad, and they found someone who looked like Orban's son, but of course they still had to corroborate it, so they used facial recognition programs and traditional reporting, to confirm that it's him. So it's increasingly, there is something that is an ongoing project. We cannot really tell a lot about that, but we use public records, but also we combine it with AI technology to extract more and more information from that. So that's also something that we work with. I don't know if you have anything else, Georgie?
No, I was about to mention this experiment. We are trying to build something with the help of AI out of public records, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, but it's some time until we can publish it still.
Thank you so much. So before we start the informal part of the evening, first of all, thanks to our co-organizers, Presse Club Concordia, who hosted us dossier. Thanks to you two for coming to Vienna, especially András. András was last at the Forum Informationsfreiheit event in 2015.
It's good to be back. Thank you.
Let's try not to make it 9.5 years till the next time. And just to preview, our next event in this series will be on June 17th, and our guests will be the German Freedom of Information portal Staat.de, the head of the investigative team there, and we're super looking forward to having her here. Details will be up soon on the website. Thanks again for coming, and let's see what else we want to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.